what you were saying.
Back to California. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 26th meeting of the Board of Education. Here with me, I have Krasnoff, Mr. Lee, Mrs. Jacobson, Mrs. Flynn, myself, Mr. Peterson, Superintendent Testani, Mrs. Maxon-Canelli, Mr. Asa, Mrs. Guernsey, and Mrs. Rinaldi. You'll join me in Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and thank you everyone to an exciting new school year. We'll open it up to public comment. If anyone has discussions, comments that they want to make on items that are on tonight's agenda, feel free to come up to the table and. Okay. Seeing none, moving on. Presentations. Update for summer maintenance projects by Mr. Papa George. I do not see him here. Well, with unanimous consent, let's move on to the approval of minutes in the consent calendar. Any objections? Approval of minutes. We have approval of minutes from the June 10th and special and executive meetings and the June 24th executive and special meetings. I have a motion. Mr. Jacobs, seconded by Mr. Lee. Any questions or comments?
There was one I had, sorry. I have to follow back up with you. I was not present at one of those meetings, so I'm in here.
Really?
You have Mr. Lee absent, but then
Arriving later. It's in there, friend. Go check.
Is that acceptable, Ms. Lee? You want to
Double check.
propose an amendment of some way? Okay.
no, it shows as absent. Okay, never mind.
Double check, guys.
Any other questions or comments on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? It's unanimous, thank you. I guess we'll go back to item number 4, seeing Mr. Papa George, presentation about summer maintenance projects.
Are all running. Most of them are in good shape. Actually, no, for seriousness, we have completed the majority of our projects. We do have a few that are still in progress to be completed mode. Through classroom signage is all ordered and being installed as we speak. The big one here would probably be the add storage area at the top of the stairwell landing by the gym at Ludlow High School that we put on pause just because the pricing came back higher than stated for it. So it's not something we're going to be able to do out of our operating budget, and you will see it shortly in your 1, 2s, and 3s list that get those out to you guys in the coming weeks. Elevator modernization, that is in progress. We have worked with the principal there. He does know, because we did the last elevator there as well during school hours, that we will have to be working there. It's an elevator that services by the cafeteria, so there wasn't a big concern about noise. They believe the noise from the cafeteria will be louder than the actual work being done. And that is again just because of the delay in materials being purchased and delivered to the school. The lead times are still very long for elevators. This fire alarm placement, Ludlow High School, Ludlow Middle School, I apologize. That is in progress. The decision was made working with the fire marshal's office that the better approach to that project was to have all materials in-house installed before we started pulling apart an operating system at this point. Working with the fire marshal's office, we agreed that it would be better to locate and store all the materials needed to start that project for some longer lead times. There was some options to work around that, but for safety wise, we felt the best way would be to postpone until next summer when all the materials will be in site at the school, ready to begin their last day of school. I don't know if there's any specific questions about the projects.
Mrs. Flynn?
Just one quick question. Under Roger Sherman, it says investigate pipe leak and then right below it, investigate enclosing the computer area. Can you just tell us where those investigations went, if anywhere?
Yeah, so the investigating pipe leak was, we did some digging because we found some old reports from a previous maintenance supervisor who was no longer with us, that there may have been a leak, and then there was some concern brought to us from some parents about slight elevation in the floor where they felt the leak. We did some investigating, did some camera line work, and we found that there was no active leak in that area. And then having an engineer take a quick look at it for us, we determined that the reason for the elevation was there was at one point some type of wall there, so there's a concrete. The concrete around that portion has settled a little bit, but the outer wall of the solid base wall where the beams sit has not settled as much. That's what's giving us that kind of that hilt there. We didn't feel, talking with the staff there, that it was anything to be like a tripping hazard at the moment. If it gets worse, investigate. But at this point, we were gonna leave it how it is. And then further down the road, when we do any carpet replacement or anything there, we can patch it in or feather it out more, so it gives it a more cleaner look to it than kind of a bump at this point. We did look at also the request of the principal was to have an area of the library enclosed where they have their computers now. It's something that we did have an architect take a look at. We have some preliminary drawings on it, but again, that's going to have to be moved to a project list on the 1, 2s, and 3s.
See the word investigate, you're always curious what you found.
Yep.
Thank you for that.
No, absolutely.
Mrs. Maxine Finley?
Just three to ask about, the district-wide visitor safety upgrades, which was not on the, June list. So what was that about?
So that was it was a conversation we had a system that was brought to us by the police department last year that we investigated and we were looking into using. It was not a complete, after meeting with the company, it was not a complete system. They were having their own issues with it. They actually tried to hire Marco to help them get it resolved, but moving forwards, we did find a new company. We found a new program. The police department vetted it. They were very happy with it. So it is we are using it for entrance into the buildings now. So there's an iPad at all of our schools now where parents can scan, or any visitor, I shouldn't just say parents, anyone can scan to get into the building, and it runs it through our background check as well as the federally background checks to show that they are safe and viable person into the building. There's also an app involved with it where you can create at home your own passport, as they call it, so that when you get to the building, you don't need to use your driver's license to get into the building. You can scan an app and you're pre-registered in there. We're really encouraging family members to do that, especially if they visit the building often, because it just speeds up the process. The process to get into the building now is it's like I said, there's an iPad where you have to hold your license up and it compares your license to you, and then it checks you and allows you in the building. It's actually the same system we've been using for a few years at the high schools. It's now just been rolled out to all the visitors at all the schools.
It's an expansion of their program, Raptor Technologies. When we met with the police department and former Chief Gaudet, who heads emergency services, this is going to be, there's an expansion of this coming. We wanted to roll this out in the first phase, and then there's an emergency call system that goes along with it, where staff members will have badges that they can call in case of an emergency, and there will be access points that they install throughout the building that can pinpoint exactly where the emergency is, so first responders can respond accurately. And if that person then moves, it'll follow their movement. It's a pretty intensive look at emergency services that we just get our toes in the water. Right now, little bit of a bumpy rollout, but Mike Stahl and the SRO division, the Public Safety Division, School Safety Division is helping with that rollout, but it is,
And just to be clear, I normally wouldn't have asked if that had said visitor security, but visitor safety made me sound like our visitors weren't safe.
oh,
And so that's why I was asking what we were doing, but I still appreciate, now I know, so thank you. The Fairfield Ludlow press booth fiber also was not listed on our original.
It was not listed on the original. It was something that has been asked for in the past, since we did it at Ward a few years back to improve the cell coverage and the equipment being used out there. We did meet with them and we felt that it was a viable request and it was something that we could do out of our operating budget. Because of the new scoreboard out there, this improves the internet connectivity out there, so when there's troubleshooting, there's the new scoreboard over there, when there's a problem with it, it's the company can log in and troubleshoot it over the internet to see what's happening, what's not communicating. But the couple of times a year that we've had to do that or even get updates on the software, it's been very glitchy on getting the updates because of how far, it's not super far, but it's far enough away from the building that the internet was not very supportive there. So this will allow us to have the better support. It's a fiber line. It's a dedicated line from the press box to the actual building. So it's not trying to use Wi-Fi. It's an actual line. And it's actually something that when we paved the roadway in the back there and paved the walkway in a few years ago, we ran conduit underneath in preparation for doing this type of work. So we were already halfway there. We just completed the project at this point.
Okay, thank you. And then the last one, if we could get most up to date on the Ward Light Tower.
Our light towers have been delivered. They are being assembled. The ground radar was completed today, so we will be getting the trenches run starting tomorrow, and we are moving forwards. We still have a completion date, and we are still on target for the first home football game of the 19th. So I met with the principal and the AD yesterday. We went over the schedule and what would be needed. So they're working with us to make sure that we can keep moving in.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Just,
Ms. Jacobson?
just a technical matter. So several of these, and I understand that we thought that these were gonna be maintenance projects, but they did move to capital and non-recurring. So just the elevator, FLHS, the fire alarm at RLMS, the safety and security upgrades at Tomlinson did end up falling down below under town capital and non-recurring. So just as a reminder, those moved out of operating and into capital planning, into the capital project, so. But I was gonna ask the same question about the light towers, so just a tech reminder.
Absolutely true. Any other questions?
I'll just say thank you. It's always a lot of work that gets done over the summer and
Absolutely.
take advantage of all that time. And unlike the town, for people who don't necessarily understand, a lot of our work has to be done during the summer. So it's a heavy lift, and thank you to your team and everyone who worked through the summer to get as much done as we can over that time.
Absolutely.
I wanna kind of piggyback that. It should be mentioned that, the three schools that we know that went through a major project, Osborne, Fairfield Woods and North Stratfield, they got them ready for the first day of school. Something has to be said about the way your cleaning crew and everyone came together and they cleaned up all that, if you wanna call it the mess, the dust and everything throughout the summer has been made. I was in there a week before school started, just take a look, and from what I heard from today, it's night and day, and that has to do on your staff getting that school ready for school.
Staff did a great job. It is a team effort. It was a very long Sunday.
It's always remarkable going past some of these parking lots in June when suddenly all the industrial equipment is there and now it's gone and back to normal like it never happened. But we do very much appreciate all your work. Thank you. All right, moving on, new business, first reading of policies, first reading of policy 3440 inventories.
I don't have much to say about these. I don't think these are our sexiest policies that we've brought to you, but happy to take any questions on them.
So we can take them as a unit, Mrs. Jacobson.
Yes, thank you. The operation and maintenance of plant This taking up the word an adequate program, but there was no replacement. I mean, it makes me feel like we're okay with an inadequate, and I know that wasn't your intent, I'm sure, but amenable to something like exemplary. I just was wondering why that adequate came out from the proposal.
Well, actually,
Because
very
you
much,
can't define
very
it.
much in keeping with why you wanted something put in there is that adequate definitely seemed not what we
Inadequate.
would want to see.
Okay.
And then we just thought it was cleaner to leave it as a straight read that maintaining a program of building operation and maintenance. And because of course, if you start putting adjectives in, then it kind of calls for a definition of those adjectives. So we just thought it was cleaner as is.
Thank you.
But thank you for noticing that.
Yes.
Any other comments or questions on these 4 policies? I would just ask about the smoking one. I mean, it's one of those that we just say we're following state law. Is that the reason it's going? It's
Pretty much, yes.
good. I mean, otherwise, I'm happy having policy. Both schools.
You can't smoke on school ground.
No, and we want to make the policy manual cleaner. I understand that. So it's not, I'm mostly curious.
Well, I think basically what you just said just captured,
Okay. Well, then that was easy.
that was a short conversation.
Any other comments on the policies? I will have these on our, for approval on our next meeting. We look forward to item 7B, review and feedback on draft capital waterfall. And this is where we get into the meat of our meeting. To give a little background, and I'll turn over to Mrs. Jacobson in a minute. This is obviously something that we do every year. Update our capital requests for the town. We try to have an approved or approved version of this document before we go to the capital planning summit, which is held by the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance. That will be held on the 25th this year. And obviously, we have a lot of capital projects that are in state of ready to be put on here. This is ready to be see a fairly major overhaul because of all the data that we're getting from the working group project. And just to skip ahead a little bit, we did have what I think is going to be the last working group committee meeting today. And I was told that the report will be made available to us sometime on Friday. And we will have a discussion on it in this room, 7 o'clock on the 3rd, Wednesday, the 3rd, where we will be able to ask questions of the Spiegels consultants, 7 p.m.
So change from 6.
So yes, it's going to be our meeting. Board of Selectmen is going to meet at 4 o'clock. They're going to have a short presentation on this by Spiegels. But then the first select woman said, we'll have the main meeting with most of the questions at your site with your board. They will be here as ex officio. So they may also ask questions as we get into more detail on it. But the expectation was that the more detailed presentation by Spiegels was going to take place here in front of us, starting at 7 p.m. on the 3rd. And I can go in more detail about that later, but I did want to point out that over the summer, the Facilities Committee has done some work on this. There's been some blanks because the working group's work has not yet been done. And I was talking to Mrs. Jacobson before the meeting to try to see if we can find time for Facilities Committee to come in and finish their work on a first read that we will hopefully have before us on the 9th. But with that, why don't you take over and.
Can I just ask?
Oh, yes.
So that's gonna be BOE, BOS.
It's going to be a BOE meeting.
Yes, but the
BOS
BOS
members,
members will be there.
at least Ms. Talley will be.
And any Board of Finance members or no?
Not that, I asked, Mrs. Vitale was saying that she would inform our TM and Board of Finance that this meeting was taking place if they wanted to attend, but we were not gonna have them here to ask questions. That was her thinking on how that would be structured. I'm sorry, Mrs. Mexico.
Yeah, no, just as a follow-up to Mr. Ace's question, if they expressed interest in, and if any were to attend, is there a mechanism by which they can ask questions? And again, that would involve the construction of the agenda, I assume, or heaven forbid, if even 5 of them wanted to be there, can it be renoticed as a joint meeting?
Well, certainly,
Again, I'm
yeah.
optimistic.
No, I mean, we can change the agenda as needed. This information is 2 hours old.
Yeah, no, I got it.
And it was not what I expected, this way. Anyway, in any event, I'm fairly certain that the Board of Finance chair can be here as ex officio. But other members, I don't know the answer to that question, but I can find out, and I'm certainly happy to field interest from other boards. I did think, and Ms. Vitale also thought, that the bulk of the questions were going to come from us. At least the in-depth questions about what the report was gonna look like. And so she wanted to make sure that we had the best opportunity to ask the deepest questions. And I don't want to get into this entirely here, but Mr. Krasnov?
I'll just say I have concerns bringing in people, because questions are gonna come rapid fire, and we may not get the information that we need first. So that, like, if we wanna do a follow-up with everyone, I think that's a good idea, but
Yeah.
I think it's a lot
Yeah.
that, you know, 20 people at a table rapid firing questions at Rutland's Figals. We may get off the rails real.
So, and that's fair. And one of the requests that was made at the working group committee meeting today was if we have this report in hand on Friday, which I expect that we will, for board members to take their time, go through it with whatever time they have. Obviously, it's a holiday weekend, I understand that. But any questions that can be submitted to Figals in writing beforehand will certainly help streamline the conversation.
Should they go to you?
I would suggest coming through me.
So the process is we're gonna get the document Friday and make comments this weekend and send them to you to create the agenda for Wednesday, the 3rd.
Well, I mean, the agenda is gonna have a single item. The item is gonna be
No.
review and, you know, presentation by Figals about the working report. But yes, I mean, any questions they get beforehand, they can prepare answers. You know, multiple board members may have similar questions. They can loop into a specific answer. I just want to make sure that, because our discussions are certainly going to get deep. Like, we're going to ask, we who have been living this, these projects for years are going to have a lot of in-depth questions that we may not anticipate until somebody asks another question. But the more of the basic questions and the themes that we can get out beforehand, the better prepared they'll be. Ms. Jacobson.
I suggest to save you a lot of angst, our Google Doc format, so that if 5 of us have the same question, you're not getting that email 5 times.
That is an excellent.
Right? So everyone can see when they go into the Google Doc, Rinaldi asked that question, I don't need to ask it, maybe I'll say echo or something, right? Otherwise, you might get 150 questions, 2/3 of them, they're the same exact question. That's just a recommendation to save you some gray hair.
That's a good example.
So anyway, to elaborate on Mr. Peterson's layout of the time schedule in our facilities committee meeting week, I was asked in coordinating with Mr. Peterson to put as many facilities committee meeting dates on the calendar with Mr. Testani. So we have 4 or 5 September meetings on hold, just in case we needed additional time in preparation. So our committee is well set up in order to do some of the backload before the 9th as well as requested. So we can talk about that offline, but if we have the meeting on the 3rd with the board of selectmen, we will probably go with our 4th date as a committee. That will hammer out a lot of things on the 3rd, preparation for backup for this board for the 9th. So it's just, yeah. Ideally.
Ideally, to expand on that, I was talking to Ms. Jacobson about this again before the meeting. We may want to I think that there's going to be a fulsome discussion around how the working group report feeds into our waterfall. And we may want to have a special meeting the week after we receive it. So, or the week after the 9th. So I will be in contact with you about that, see about if there are better days or worse days. I just think the more time that we have for this discussion, better, because we do have to approve the waterfall to submit to the town capital planning summit. We have a hard date to be ready by before we go before then. So again, if we can pass back to you and talk about the work you've done over the summer.
Okay. Thank you for the memo, Mr. Papa George, and I can, oh, sorry.
Mind if I just ask a quick question? Can you confirm the start time for September 9th?
Start time, I don't have an agenda yet. The start time we were talking about was 7 o'clock. The thought was the board of development committee meeting would go down at town hall from 4 to 6, and then would shift up here.
So staying at 7, okay.
Yeah,
You mean September 3rd?
September 3rd. No, I'm talking about the 9th because there was something that someone said earlier that made me think there was an extension to the meeting on the 9th.
It's an executive session.
Executive session.
5. That's,
Well, 5:30 is what I'm thinking right now, yes.
I'll be there.
Or the thing that we were talking about earlier today.
Okay.
Should I go?
I think so.
Okay, Mr. Asa, did you have a question?
No.
Okay, just sorry. Okay, so. Met a couple times over the summer. To go through what we did know or updates. So the good news is you'll see significant changes on the HVAC projects. For Ludlow, Ward, and I can refer to line item 18, 19, 20. So phase 3, 4, and 5. In the memo, you will see that 4 and 5 are just in the wrong place at the current time. Walter Fitzgerald will bump up, while 4 would bump down. The numbers are accurate based on their placement and installation. They just were put in wrong order on the documents. They're in the right order on the fact. One of the first things that we talked about was that this waterfall says 10-year waterfall, but there's 15 years on here. So conversation about a 15-year waterfall. And as everyone knows or to recollect, the town no longer uses this anymore. This is just for us. These are year of approvals. They're not cash flow. So how this all fits into the cash flow document on the town side is very different than this. So that's important to see the cash flow part of it. But the good news is for HVAC, we've got a $29 million savings in change that have come down on that item. So those are good. We talked a little bit about item number 11, where that $25,000 sits on for EV system replacements, and the town telling us that they weren't really gonna be quote bonding these small amounts. So how that shakes out, whether it just moves into total project or comes packaged with something else was an item. Just as you recall, they don't want to bond less than 100,000, so $25,000 item, does that happen in operating or do we just move it over, would be a consideration for everyone. There really wasn't anything that we discussed. Obviously, for column 25, 26, that seed money would come off because it didn't happen. And then as we go forward, any changes to the numbers of White would happen, along with any changes to the reimbursement based on new statute. If you're adding EC space. So that's Dwight, which obviously we couldn't make any changes because we don't have those numbers yet. Moving on, Holland Hill, I don't think there was anything. Jennings, same thing. New numbers, but also new reimbursement rates. North Stratfield, we had a conversation about, because if you recall from our long-range facilities plan, there are 2 schools that were in the back for renovations that weren't on the waterfall yet, and that was a North Stratfield renovation and deficiency and Sherman Phase 4. So in looking at this 15 years, I raised the issue of so North Stratfield doesn't have a place yet, right? And this is a 15-year document. When do we start thinking about where and when we're gonna place that? We also had a conversation about the remaining items for Sherman Phase 4. And those are more items that I think the administration, and I won't speak for them, are thinking of, rather than quote a true Phase 4 project on here, might be items that are handled individually through operating and other items, because they're not deficient spaces, so to speak, they have their HVAC and all that, right? So just food for thought on North Stratfield and how that moves forward. Osborne Hill, same thing. The number did not change from last year. Other than, of course, if there's something that comes up, that may change as well. Riverfield, nothing. Roger Sherman, I already shared with you. I'm just giving you high level items here. Stratfield, there wasn't any changes. Early childhood's there. So let's talk about this for a second. So thinking 26, 27, there's a $1.5 million number. As you recall, on the currently approved waterfall, it's about 772,000. That's been a placeholder for a great number of years, as everyone recalls. Last year, facilities had a rough estimate, and this is just for that ECC portion, the MOU issue, if we were using it as a temporary site for ECC. Our estimate last year was actually $520,000. What was on the waterfall was $772,000. We just held that last year. Mr. Papa George went in this summer, and again, Albert, after I get through the overview, and got a number of 1.5 actually for the same thing. So it's tripled from our original estimate, doubled from what's on the waterfall. We had a conversation as a committee, do we leave it on this 72 as approved and let the board decide what they want to put in here? Ultimately, the administration wanted to put the 1.5, and then we can have our discussion as we move forward of what we are willing or not willing to do there. But that's, there's no written estimate for this, just so you know, there's like a backup piece that goes with it, but I'm sure administration can walk you through why and how that number changed. RLMS, as you recall, last year, there were 4 projects that we approved and went into bonding that were in our operating budget. Well, one of them was the word lights. So that was after, that's not on here. But I'll go school by school. So the alarm project from RLMS is not on this waterfall, so it should be added because it was bonded. So that would be an item. Then, Tomlinson, the HVAC number, that's up on top, never mind. The safety and security project that we approved for about $206,000, or that the town is bonding is not on here, so that should be added. The Ludlow elevator, number 2 is not on here, that was already bonded. These would all go in 25-26 column. And then Ward, the lights would be added as well. And then 25-26, the turf project didn't happen, so in terms of moving that to wherever we're going to move it. So that's kind of the summary on each building. The last thing that I will say that we talked about was that these HVAC projects are under the top as district-wide, but they're not district-wide, they're building projects. And the reason why that was originally done way back when we started talking about that is because the town bodies wanted to see HVAC like as a whole with a number, right? But we did discuss, and I think administration agrees, that at this point, they should just go back to being under their school buildings where they belong in the year, because they're not district-wide. We understand why that was done for a few years now to get the bigger picture of where things sit, but that's a consideration for us too, or just change it to HVAC/district-wide or something. But I think that we discussed that they should go back under their buildings, but again, up to the board on how they want to do it. So to be clear, so they're captured under their actual building. Those are some of the bigger items that we talked about. Also the 15-year thing, 23, 24, 24, 25. Do we want to leave that on here or not? 25, 26 should stay on because it's the year immediately preceding. I checked the town capital plan this afternoon, getting ready for tonight. And they do have the immediate past from last year, not several years past. So again, that might be a conversation with the town. How many years do they want on here, for cash flow purposes? But typically we would see 23, 24 and 24, 25 fall off, keep 25, 26. I guess it would become a 13-year waterfall, but yeah, these are just some of the nuances and detail as we collaborate on a cash flow basis going forward versus an annual year of approval basis. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, or if the committee has any other commentary that they want to share on what we talked about, or over to Mr.
George, if you have anything to add to the.
I would just go to the ECC portion, the 1.5. So we did, prior to the selectmen meeting with you, we did work with one of our local contractors and our local architects. We were given full access to the building for probably the first time. We've always had pieces of access to it. We were given full access. We were able to walk through some ceiling tiles, look at closets that always had padlocks on them when we were there, what was really available, what was not available. We also were able to ask some questions of some staff members from the town, as well as the Giant Step that were still in the building when we were there. So.
Child's Garden.
What's that?
Child's Garden.
Yeah, Child's Garden. Child's Garden. So that being said, we went back, we worked with our architect, and then we had the Board of Selectmen meeting where there was a lot of question about the MOU. So we stopped the architect because we said we weren't comfortable spending money to vet out these projects. However, that being said, he was willing, because he's done a lot of work with us in the past. He's a local person. He took from what his notes were on that and he put a number together and that's where the 1.5 came from. We don't have an official backup page from him. We don't have the breakdown from him. We're happy if we got an MOU, we'd be happy to re-engage with him, but at this time, not knowing, we didn't want to invest money and time into getting him more involved with this. If we knew we were taking over in April, we would definitely already be designing the work and knowing exactly what needed to happen. His other thought and the reason for some of these increases that he was pertaining to were playground costs have gone up significantly. And some of the safety security work that we do in the district to be the district standard has gone up significantly in pricing as well. So those are some of the drivers in his updated numbers.
Let me just very quickly add on to your MOU comment, just for the public's sake. This is something that we talked about as a board in July. At the time, we were hoping that we were going to get approval by the Board of Selectmen to a right of first refusal for that property. Kind of sparked more discussions and more questions. My most recent conversations that I've had with the first Selectwoman and Mr. George, you've been there for some of these. There's still very much an interest in having those conversations. So that may be something that we'll deal with in the months to come. Mr. President.
Just to elaborate on our ECC discussion from the facilities committee, for those of you who weren't able to watch it. We were discussing whether it should stay at the 1.5. Go back to the number that we originally had the 700 and change, or actually completely take it off. Now, we felt as a committee, it wasn't up to us to make that decision. It's more of a board decision. However, just some of the things that came up from my standpoint was the more I thought about it, the less I really wanted to move kids of that age to a temporary space. I know they'll be moving on to their schools, but I'd rather see them in the schools. Some of the justification to pull it off also was originally part of the reasoning on this piece was because of the racial imbalance. Which has now kind of been taken off the table. So there isn't as much of an urgency to free the space in some of the schools that we would be freeing the space with the ECC moving over. So I know we don't have the whole plan with the working group and it will be coming in the next few weeks. I just have concerns really putting any money into a temporary space.
I'll just add for clarification purposes that in the spring, the Connecticut General Assembly did not pass the extension of the delay, the racial balance mandate. So we still have no idea where that's going to be, whether that's going to come off in a special session. I don't want to leave the impression that it's gone because it's very much in a state of limbo right now. But I understand exactly where you're coming from. And I think I do appreciate you bringing that change to the board to decide. Certainly make an amendment request at our meeting to have the discussion. Thank you. Mr. Tracy.
Yes, thank you. With regard to the ECC, I appreciate, Mr. George. Thank you for getting those numbers because I've thought for years the numbers we had were nowhere near realistic. I quite honestly think 1.5 is still unrealistic. I think it will be more than that. That's my own personal statement, but knowing and seeing how things have gone in the last couple of years with costs and escalations. So I would just say that I support that being on there, even if it is as a placeholder, as we have done with things in the past. I think it's important to put on there because it is a possibility. And so I just would say that. With regards, Ms. Jacobson, you made a comment about Osborne Hill. And Osborne Hill out to 2030, 31, 31, 32, that you left those numbers alone.
Yeah, so that's the number that's been on Osborne for a number of years.
Yeah, and I have concerns with that. Because the fact of the matter is those numbers have been on there for a long time.
We did ask, we did talk about it in committee too. Are you comfortable still having that number? Remember, Osborne's not a big project.
Hang on a second, I want to address my question to Mr. George. Basically what you're saying is, I'd like to hear why we're comfortable with that number remaining the same when we're going into a $300 million waterfall? Why would we not increase that or explore why it shouldn't be increased when at this point it's a drop in the bucket of 300 million to increase it accordingly?
That is correct. But so what we said was we were comfortable with that number mainly because the project over the years has been escalated out over the years in the waterfall. And in addition to that, part of that overall thought of project has actually shrunk in the overall project. Like, for instance, when we did the air conditioning this year, we changed all the lights out, we increased the fire suppression system. So we've chipped away at what that major project would have been. So in balancing, we feel that we've been balancing out pretty well with that. So that's why we were comfortable with the placeholder as it was. Had we not done any of the other projects, we agree that number would be low and we should be looking at making an increase to it at this time.
Okay. No, I appreciate that answer, because that makes sense that we've already proactively done stuff that would have been part of that project, and those costs could escalate over time too. So, okay, thank you. And then with regard to the commentary on the district-wide HVAC program and everything, I mean, it makes absolute sense to put it in. I could care less what it's called. You know, it is a district-wide HVAC. It is a district-wide HVAIQ project because it does include so many campuses. But I do appreciate the nuance and the thought of putting it under the buildings. You mentioned a savings of close to $10 million. $29 million. So I was wondering if you could just briefly, high level, just explain that for the public that's listening in, because that's a substantial number. We're still looking at over $100 million, pretty much, to continue. Well, actually, well over $100 million to finish out. So if you could, if one of you could talk to Mr. Papa George, maybe to the $29 million savings for those in the public and audience that may not be aware of that.
Yeah, or Mr. Yeah.
So as you know, when we start the project, when we always do a large project like this, we've always asked for seed money in advance. That number that starts that ball rolling is a conceptual number based on conceptual design, conceptual what we feel. We work with local builders and people who do this kind of work on a regular basis. Based on square footage, we come up with a number that we feel comfortable as a conceptual number. As we get into that project, seed money is awarded, and then we start going through the project itself, and then we get to different phases of the design of the project. And right now, the building committee has made it with the exception of Tomlinson, which is already to full state and is working. We're at design documents now for this. So they've done a deeper dive. They've looked at the buildings. They've spent a lot more time walking the buildings, understanding how our buildings operate, what would be needed to make these projects come to fruition. And that's where we got the better numbers from. The building committee provided those to us. We updated the waterfall with the understanding that those numbers are absolutely going to change again as each building gets closer to actual project and designs are fine-tuned and gone through more. We will get to a better number for each one of them. That's what we did with Tomlinson. That's why that's the true number for Tomlinson at this point, but we only have design document numbers for the other 3 sites. But again, those will continue to be worked on and fine-tuned and get closer to each project.
And again, for the benefit of the public, as we go down, we have these upcoming meetings with the numbers on Dwight and Jennings, coming in at very high numbers. I don't know what we're going to see with what comes out, if it's going to be higher or lower. Can you speak to, and you might not be able to at this point, to any conversations, and maybe to the chair as well, with the other town bodies such as the Board of Finance of the cash flow? I know for years we've talked, as Mrs. Jacobson mentioned, where that fits in with the cash flow. So if we move forward with a Dwight project that's $15 or $20 million more than anticipated, or well, it definitely will be of what we originally talked years ago. how that will fit in, and does that pose the risk of bumping some of the school-based HVAC IQ projects out further?
Maybe I can speak to that a little bit because this is a conversation that I've had on the sidelines with First Selectwoman Vitale. The answer is the town is concerned about the cash flow and concerned about where all projects fit into it. It's been made clear to me that we need to have a discussion about, depending on what we advance forward, we may need to have a discussion come back to us if the town does not approve all of our projects, and if we may need to reshuffle to account for cash flows. We've not had those discussions yet. Again, it's been complicated by the fact that the numbers from the working group report are not public yet. They will be made public shortly. I have been invited to go down to speak with David Becker at Town Hall to go over cash flow discussions. So I think that's something in the next few weeks that will be discussed. I may have more information for you as we go forward in September. I don't have any specific information now, but the possibility of pushing out projects depending on what the board prioritizes has absolutely been mentioned, and frankly has been mentioned almost every year as we've gone to them in the capital planning summit, that if you want this, you may have to make sacrifices elsewhere. That has not been said specifically to me on this, but the thought is out there that we may need to prioritize at some point, depending on how things fit.
Thank you for that. And then my last question is, if we reference the memo at the front, looking after the first two paragraphs, the fourth bullet point, combined seed money requests with overall project requests. And I'm wondering if, Mr. Papa George, I see, for example, one second. I see on the Dwight, it still looks like seed money is listed there. And on Jennings, it still looks like seed money is listed there in the prior year to the large numbers. So could you just clarify that for?
So we did not make that change yet. We wanted, the board,
Okay.
as mentioned by Ms. Jacobson, the waterfall has become more of the board's working document to understand. So what the town is saying is, what we really need to know is, when are you gonna ask for that money? And we can say, we're gonna ask for it this year, and then they feed it into their cash flow. If they, okay, this is the year we're gonna ask for it, but we need that seed money and we need to break out this project. It's a 2-year project, it's a 3-year project. So it's more of a breakout on their end. So what they're asking us to do is the last administration asked us to break it out so they had better understanding. This administration said, put it back together. We're open to what you.
Hold on, so.
Their administration can ask us.
I don't mean to interrupt, but let's just not go down. So in this document, it says the facilities committee discussed and is requesting the following changes. But you're saying that the administration.
I apologize. That should have fallen under a separate area. We did discuss it at facilities, but it's something that was brought to the administration, not to the facility.
So to clarify to the facilities chair, is this something that the town has asked and that's why you're asking for it to not be broken out?
No, the only one that I really referenced was the Burr one, because it was only $25,000. And obviously for Dwight, that seed money that's on here is going to fall off because we didn't improve it, right?
I'm confused. Combine seed money requests with overall project costs. So let's just look at Jennings, for example.
That would stay. Yeah, as far as I know, it would stay as seed money, as 2 separate numbers.
Okay, that, I would prefer that it,
Yeah.
as a board member, I would prefer that it stay that way. I don't like the idea of combining them into one. So I appreciate.
I don't know. I mean,
Papa George, let me put it to you this way, since I feel like this is something 5 or 6 years ago, we changed our practice to ask for more money up front to get better numbers, to go into the projects. I mean, my sense has been that approach has been constructive for us. Back to the cash flow issue, if we put everything on one line, would we make the request to the town that we get $2 million in the first year, $40 million in year 2, so that we can operate under that system?
And we made that change to ask for the seed money up front so that we could get better numbers before going for a full project cost. I definitely I mean, I was here when we made that change. I would support continuing that support. I would continue that practice.
Can I follow up with you on you? Good point, because the cash flow is really the important thing here, but also, we're the only board that does that. So like if there's $100 million pipe, there isn't seed money. Right? What ends up happening too, just for food for thought, is that by doing it like this, we are adding inflation. Right? Whereas we would have a total project like the town does for their projects.
No, we're not adding
We
escalation.
are.
No, because the project, if it's in, you're only adding escalation if you're delaying because of seed money.
Right.
But that's not what we're doing. So the project is placed in a year, so we're not delaying it because we're asking for the seed money. The seed money does not escalate the project. Because if it were the year before and we delayed it because all of a sudden, oh, now we need seed money and now we need to do this. But not to argue, but I don't think that's valid.
It's just, that's how I feel. So because if you didn't ask for seed money, you could do it the year before of the year of the seed money versus the year of.
Well,
Right.
depending if there's other projects.
Right, all right. But I agree, it's helpful because we get better numbers that way. So again, if it's an administration ask, there may be a reason for that because they're counting on that as part of the cash flow process and probably part of a building committee process and everything else and allocating a certain number of that towards the building committee process. So that might be something that we can talk about in terms of, you're not really gonna change the numbers here much, but it's how they're allocating the dollars and in what year. So again, they're not using this document anymore. This is really for us just to get an idea of what we're doing. So that might be a helpful conversation for you to have when you meet with everyone to understand.
Sure.
Because it might actually produce a savings, actually. I don't know, but it's a hypothesis.
Mr. Peterson, I lied. That wasn't my last question. Can I keep the floor with one more?
I think you have I think that was a follow-up. I think you have the floor.
Yeah, and it's just quick. With regard to the turf field that we approved in last year, and there's note here, for the public, could we just elaborate, Mr. Chair, that why that didn't pass through the town bodies and why we're putting it on here? Because I know I'm hearing from, starting to hear from a lot of ward families that they're quite upset that the town did not pass that, and I want the information out there to be accurate.
So this came off at the same time that the Dwight seed money came off. It was not advanced. These projects were not voted down by other town bodies, but it was judged at the time, especially in light of the Little League field project over at Ludlow Middle, that we wanted to have better numbers to go into it. We wanted to have a better sense. So at the time, it was not advanced. I will say that I have heard that this is something that I think may be warranted to be considered for a request this year. I don't have any specific information to share about that, but I think that I would imagine that our board is in favor of advancing the projects that we've already talked about on the waterfall. I do think that this will come up again for other town bodies in this year for a request.
So I guess I would just want to make sure that the board is still, I mean, that was an ad that I had made that was unplanned. And I did add, and it did pass with a majority, obviously. So I guess, is that something, or I guess we'll talk about it at the next meeting if we're, but I would just say that I appreciate that being put on there. And would like that to move.
What we did, I just wanna elaborate, Mr. Asa, thank you. We talked about that in committee as well, and I've already made a request unofficially to Mr. Peterson for the 9th to actually have the sister document, right? So we can actually see the peaks and flows of the cash flow, and fitting that in, where it might make sense. So I agree with you. I think everybody's supportive of it, and it sounds like you've already put it somewhere, so it's just not in this memo.
Thank you.
I don't know what it is, but I think it will be helpful overall for us to actually, because last year we got both, right? And this is just a preliminary conversation, but I think it will be important for us to have a good look at that cash flow document, the sister document that goes with it, because ultimately that is what is going to be presented to the Board of Finance, not this document.
Yeah, and I'll just add, again, this is a discussion. This is not a first read. When it comes before us for first read, if anyone objects to that field being on here, they can make a motion to remove it from this before we go on to vote. So
I appreciate the clarity for the public so they know that town bodies didn't actually vote it down.
correct,
It just didn't get it didn't get moved forward at this time.
correct. It was not rejected. The project is still on our plan.
Can I follow?
Sure.
So on the turf, this is something that we should thoughtfully talk about. because of what happened with RLMS, that project ended up being over $5 million. We have a $1.5 million number on here. I can assert to you that there is no town body that believed that number last year, and I don't believe they're gonna believe that number if we keep it at 1.5. We also have, and maybe this is something through the chair to Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, there's the Parks and Rec Master Plan. There's 5 turf fields there that are hoped for in other locations as well. I don't know if it's beneficial, like, to have some sort of a general fields conversation, like what is the town's approach to all of this, but also even absent of that, I would propose to this board that we should add some money for some testing to be done, because it was $990,000 to remove that soil on top of the original authorization. And if we really are serious, should we ask now or figure out a way, call up Eli or someone, who was the vendor, how can we get this done? I think it would behoove us, Mr. Peterson, and just to this board's consideration, to do some of that work, because that's not in the estimate. And going to all of those meetings, I can tell you, no one believes that number.
Angelus and I have had this conversation extensively. We need to add money then. We added a little bit of money already. There's about 400,000 into this for just in case, maybe add a little bit more. Because if we do testing, this is what we talked about even this afternoon, and we find something, we have to do something about it, and that field is off limits and done with. We
Right.
can't afford to do that. So it's testing when we start the project.
And I'll just let you guys know, the estimate just for that soil was a little bit over 1.2 million. They were able to get some discount on it. So what the town bodies ended up appropriating was an additional 990,000.
For the remediation, not the testing.
To your point, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, I'm just throwing it out here, guys. Like, if we are serious, let's know what they're gonna ask for, let's know what they're gonna look for, and do we wanna get ahead of that or not? I'm just throwing it out here, and it sounds like you're considering some of that already, but I wanted to bring it to this board's attention.
I would add it's not as large a field as Roger Ludlow Middle School, so it won't be as much.
Hopefully nothing.
No, but if it is, that's why we were thinking more in the line of just making it like 2.5 million and just call it a day.
An extra million.
And then if it comes in less, then it's a bonus. It won't come in more, so that we don't have to be called to say, you said this, and then, because last number we got to do the field without any remediation if necessary was 1.1. We figured we threw in 400,000 just in case. We want to throw in another,
That sounds a little high then. I don't know.
Maybe 2 million.
Maybe, yeah.
go 2 million.
Okay, all right.
At least you're covered.
I just wanted to bring that to everyone.
But you want to add lights and then throw it up to 2.5.
Yes.
Well, you gotta remember, any investment in this
We
field,
also talk to Parks and Rec. What's going on?
investment in this field will generate, because if it's completed, we'll get some rental out of it. And I think looking at the way turf is going now, that rental number is gonna start to increase by the hourly rate.
I'm done, Mr. Peterson. Thank you.
Flynn.
Just a follow up on that. Thank you, Mr. Asa. I agree. I'd like to see it moved up as close as possible. I also was gonna recommend some kind of soil testing. And just, I don't know if this is for our chair or through the chair to Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, but I literally was scratching, field waterfall on the bottom. And from a lot of the emails we get from the public, to Mr. Asa's point, I feel like there is a lot of misconceptions about which fields are controlled by which town body, especially because a bunch of our town fields are housed on our campuses. So I think, and I love our Parks and Rec master plan. I was a part of that planning. I attended a lot of those meetings. I think there's great work in that. I think the only problem I have with it, it's really disconnected from our work. And I think for the public to kind of see, there's no misconceptions. This community is at a deficit, not only in just turf fields, but in fields period. We are far below everyone in Fairfield County. We are vastly behind almost everybody else in the state of Connecticut. And I think if we're gonna make a real turnaround on field availability, which to Mr. Chasani's point, creates rental income and the possibility, because to my awareness, we're not getting really much income on the turf because our kids are using it so much. We don't have a ton of inventory. So if we're really looking to increase field inventory and turf inventory, I think we need to get an understanding of what we have to begin with, so I keep doodling field master plan or field waterfall, so I don't know how we accomplish that, but I just wanted to say it out loud in public.
No, understood. I will say that the inventory of fields was a persistent topic in working group discussions as we're going through various scenarios.
I am shocked.
So I think
shocked.
the town is very much in a fields mindset.
With that said,
Yes.
I don't wanna eat up $2 million on here if someone's gonna say it ain't happening. Like, you know what I mean? Also, because we have to, we can prove it, right? And we can move it forward. But again, going back to the broader conversation, is the town doing jointly between BOE fields and Parks and Rec fields? And again, totally support putting it on here, but let's have that conversation because people think like RLMS is under BOE. It's not, it's Parks and Rec. Tomlinson is not under BOE, it's under Parks and Rec. So, just that, thank you for raising that point. I think it's a massive confusion. So, that's my 2 cents. I'm done.
Mr. Lee.
A question on the language on that, as far as the field, I hear what we're saying. Why couldn't we ask for 2 million with the bite that some of it set aside specifically as a contingency if there's a problem with the soil? You're still spending money on the soil test. If there's no problem, you're not using the money, give it right back to town or it just disappears. Instead of saying to them, hey, give us 2.1 just because we can use it. If we don't use it, give it back. That's how all the building projects have been done, is that we've asked specifically contingency money on the side that's used for abatement and things like that. When it wasn't used, goes back to kind of disappear.
Not spent.
The only thing that I would say about that, I don't think we've ever asked specifically for separating them out at the request point. That's a building committee.
This could be the time to test that. I mean, we know the field's 1.1, 1.5. You know you're gonna have to test it, right? You know, if it's free of stuff, you don't need the extra money. You give it back. If it has it, you have that money set aside, approved specifically only for that. So they can't use it for, you know, a cool scoreboard or anything like that. It's gonna be used specifically for that.
Mr. Krasnoff.
To pivot back to the bonded projects, one thing that I think we brushed upon, but that we discussed a little further in the committee. And something for everyone to think about for when we have the first read and a bigger discussion. We wanted to still somehow see it on here. Didn't know if it belonged in the actual waterfall or if it did with maybe an asterisk, just, you know, down below describing that it was bonded or something like that. Just so any facilities group or any board looking at it will know what projects were done when, versus not having them on here at all, which currently has. And then you're not able to see that these projects were done and the amount of money it costs. So just food for thought. We felt that it belongs here somewhere, but understood it was a bonded town project.
Ask a question on that. Yeah. So you wanna see past projects, just, and I only ask that because this has always traditionally just been what's coming along the way. I mean, this is a live Excel document with a lot of cell, as you can see from the numbers jumping around. There's a lot of reading on here. I can pull back. If someone's asked about a question, we can pull the history back. We just don't put it on here because then it would be 7 tables long,
Well, those bonded projects aren't history.
At 26.
which,
They're 25, 26, so they're still on.
oh, you're talking about just the 24, yeah,
Just
we,
the bonded projects.
okay, I thought you were talking about like 5 years ago.
No.
It just like,
Bonded projects that are no longer on here.
On here, but
Remember we
it's still-
discussed putting an asterisk by them or something and explaining the town
It's like-
covered it, so it doesn't roll up before total cash flow.
To remove them from the.
Remove them from the cash flow, but they're still there because they are.
They've already been bonded. Yep, all right.
Mrs. Jacobson.
I have a couple of questions on the rest of the memo, if you don't mind. Under the following projects have been identified and requested by the operations team. I don't know, we didn't talk about any of this last week, so I don't know about any of these. But for Woods Alarm and North Stratfield Fire Alarm, I'm a little confused. Because the HVAC IAQ projects included fire protection systems and fire suppression systems as a part of those bonded packages for those HVAC projects. It wasn't just HVAC, it was fire alarm stuff. So are we saying that the fire alarm was not a part of the fire protection, fire suppression plan in those projects?
So in those projects, the fire suppression was to include bringing the new equipment up to code. So for instance, air ducts are now required to have smoke detectors built into them. So that was all completed during the project. The system is up to code and operating. But during this whole process of bringing the newer system into the older system, it was identified that we should have some suppression system, or not suppression, because that was done, but fire alarm systems updated in our systems, because some of these are quite older systems, the North Stratfield system. We had the special order equipment just to be able to tie the old into new.
Got it.
There was, everything is, I don't want to leave the impression something's not working. Everything's new, everything's up to code and working. But it should be something that actually having a conversation. I was told that, yes, many years ago that we should have all of our fire suppression systems, which have a 25-year life system on them, that we should be monitoring and making sure that we are replacing them in a timely fashion and not just waiting. Past practice was wait till it fails and then purchase.
So my question then, for just North Stratfield and Woods right now,
Yep.
is to make a plea to Mr. Lee and speaking to the HVAC IAQ Building Committee as liaison, to see if there are balances within that already appropriated balance on any of those projects that can be used, because these are not cheap. I don't know what year you're looking at adding these, because we didn't discuss it, but it would be helpful, Mr. Peterson too, or Mr. Lee, where, you know, we have the bonding authorizations for the 3 schools. I haven't heard that they've gone over. Even if there's $1 million balance, can that help cover some of those at those 2 schools? Because it already included fire suppression and protection in the authorizations, like, so it shouldn't be a surprise. It's in the RFP and it's in the 14-point backup and all that. It obviously didn't spell out alarm. Just an idea, is there any funding left available there that could be happening at those projects while they're there doing the fire suppression? I don't know if the answer is, I'm just looking for an alternative source if possible. And then does the Ward AC and the Ludlow AC fire alarm system upgrades, that absolutely then is going to change the numbers?
Change the numbers.
And I plan to work with.
28 million, Mr. Asa. Okay, so if, I assume you have numbers for all these things, but those are reimbursable, right? Are alarm systems eligible for reimbursement? So that we could get some possible savings from that. So please find out if there's any balances for North Stratfield and Woods, and that would also help not delay the getting that alarm system done, because it could be wrapped in having aspirational thinking that we could use some of the urban. So I'm just thinking of an idea. So
That's probably not our call.
it's not our call.
It certainly can be added to the conversation.
Thank you. I just wanted to speak to those additional items and about those. And then the paving. A little worried about the 26-27 column, as you know. But also, Mr. Testani and myself added about 200, the board did ultimately, when we did our maintenance investment from the budget, $250,000. What had been originally cut was from paving. I don't know how much this is, but we put $250K back in for maintenance for painting and paving. So again, I don't know how much this is, but could that not be covered from what we adjusted at the end of the year?
We did some paving this summer.
We do some paving this summer, did Osborne and we did Burr. Typically in the years past, we've done sections of areas to chip away at them. One of the largest one I know we've done in the last 6 years was the back of Ludlow High School.
Yep.
So that the large one. These 2 area combined almost double that size, and that was 6 years ago, and it was approximately $500,000. So what we were looking at is that these areas, we could chip away and do sections of them, but that's years and years of do this section, and they are in poor condition. So the thought was if there was room available to bond it and do there's
room available?
room available to do the to bond it and do them both at the same time to get better pricing to do the
When's
larger.
the last time we bonded paving?
We, as a as a Board of Ed, we never bonded.
Never bond.
The town does it on a regular basis, but we have never bonded before. But again, we will, what we've paved is we paved the blacktop, the kids' play area blacktop at Osborne. So we've done sections of parking lots. These are rather large parking lots, probably some of the largest we have in the district. And they
Word shared services are coming to mind.
they are, but even the town, like I said, the town only paves in-house smaller areas and they go out and they bond and they for larger areas like this.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Peterson.
Back to Kelly.
Yeah, and speaking of shared services, I know this has been talking about the ECC. And I know this is not something anybody can definitively answer right now, but what that's always been a challenge of is how much are we willing to invest if in fact it stays temporary, because for a while there, I think some of us had hoped that maybe it would be a permanent solution. I don't know what the working group discussion on that topic has been regardless, but if the topic stays temporary and we still see a value in doing it, again, this is a future conversation, how much of that money is for things that are, we need this because it's a school site versus the site needs it? And thus my question about the shared services is that shouldn't the town be joining us on something if we're not gonna, it's not gonna become Board of Ed I mean, everything's town property, but not something that the Board of Ed will be maintaining for very long. So is that, again, kind of just like Dwight was kind of a unique conversation because of what we were trying to do there. I recognize that this is not a customary conversation, but yet it feels appropriate.
So there are some things that would be not done if it wasn't a school, and there's some things that are. So there's a kind of sliver. For instance, part of that cost is to take where the current school, the current footprint has a washer, dryer, and sink area and turn that into a nurse's office. Would the school, if we moved out, would the town need a nurse's office in that area? No, so that would be a cost that would be specifically for the school.
Depending on what they're trying to use it for,
It's
but
true, however, they do have a nurse's office in the front office area from when it was a school. There is something identified up there as a nurse office. Another thing that makes this cost go up a lot is bring it to the standard of the district for safety and security, which is not necessarily something if you're using for office space or a nurse's office that you would have to do. So there are.
also you've referenced the playground. So
And the-
I
The
absolutely,
playground would be something I would say would be something that the town could, because if we moved out, the town would still have a playground to utilize for the public, so there
Big
are
chunk.
great things.
so you're making my point for me. So what I'm asking about is I don't know how the conversation like that takes place. You know, just like I'm gonna have to go back to Parks and Rec and because right now there's not a lot of movement on the master plan. But you know, wanting to have that conversation, likewise asking, I don't know how this conversation takes place, but I would be interested. If it's not going to become a permanent solution, it doesn't seem like it should have to all be coming from us. Go ahead.
Just to make the point, I get what you're saying. You're saying the town bears it. There's one wallet. The money comes from one wallet. And whether it's through us or that, it's all coming from the same source. And it's going to, any money we spend is going to offset money that the town side has. So while I understand, the point you're making, I also would counter it to say, at the end of the day, there's one money tree in this town. And the bonding all comes from one, it's shared between us and the town. So whether it comes through our books or not, it's still ultimately the same bonding.
And I think that's a very good, important reminder, but what I'm coming at is that and again, this is not a conversation that's been updated, but we had a previous first selectman that kind of, and I don't even remember the genesis of the number of that cap, but that's the thinking I'm bringing into this of, we had been at one point told spend, but here's your cap, and that's the thinking that I bring into, you're absolutely right, of course, is that ultimately it's the money provided by taxpayers. But if we're only getting allocated a certain amount, that's where I care. So that's where that
Yeah,
thinking and that comment
I
comes
might
from.
kind of split the difference with Dina's 2 points because, Mr. Ace is correct. We don't bond anything, it's always the town. But if the town is looking at how much we're bonding for all of our projects, I think it's fair to say this is something that could be more of a joint responsibility and not be 100% kind of weighed on, against whatever. I will say that the first select one has been clear that like the idea that we have a hard cap shouldn't really be considered anymore. But obviously the cash flow is the.
I guess on $1.5 million project, are we really looking to split hairs over 200,000 is the town and 1.3 is us or vice versa? You know what I mean? Like,
No,
is it really gonna make a difference in that spending?
Fair
cap
point.
If it were there, so.
And then my other question, and I hope, again, kind of reiterating Mr. Ace's question, is that, there's the comment about the adjusted for the new state reimbursement process. And first of all, I just want to clarify that going forward, we as a board should never be counting on that, correct? So that when we talk about the price of a project, we're talking about column project total, because it keeps changing. I don't know if there's some, again, this is not my area of expertise. Maybe there are some things that, no, this has been for decades, we can always count on blank. Because I know things keep changing. And so,
We asked for a project to be funded by the town, we asked for the full amount, because that is a state requirement. They want to see that the town is willing to fund the full amount of the project before they are willing to offer this reimbursement.
right, but what I'm asking is that our conversation be focused on that as we start having debates. I don't know, maybe we won't be having any debates, I don't know. But unless you can assure us, no, this is a written in stone, 100% we can count on it. I know how that would make you squirrely. That's why I'm using those words. I would just hope our focus would be on the project total. But that said, I was hoping you still could explain that first bullet point.
The memo?
Yes, sorry.
So, yes, as you said, it's always a matter of changing. The state always changes. We were at 26, now we're at 27% reimbursement. So that is locked in for now. However, there's also some, and I apologize for being late. One of the reasons I was late is I was in the process of working through an email with state representatives. Because there's things that have been put on table in legislation about possible bump for ECC, possible bump. There is a bump for ECC. There's supposed to be also possibly a bump for special education. But when we reached out to the state to get clarification on the legislation wording versus how it's gonna be handled and what's gonna happen, we don't know yet. So we're trying to figure that out to say, as it was pointed out in our meeting today, the legislation wording specifically says that the bump for an ECC is dedicated to that space of the building. However, we've received wording from.
Does it?
Well, this is what we were shown, and then we also expressed that we were told, and we did some research, that it is for the total cost of the building. So that being said, one of the questions that was asked, and not at the meeting today, but at another meeting, was, is there a percentage point? Like, does 25% of your project have to have an ECC component, or is there not? And again, the state is telling us that they haven't even dug into how this is gonna operate yet. So we're waiting for guidance on that, which is why we said how the state reimburses is always kind of in the air until we get official legislation on it. I know. But you.
What Mr. Krasnoff had to say, but it's your.
No, I'm not done. Also, because I agreed with Mrs. Jacobson's point, I distinctly recall regarding the bonding for paving. And I'm not saying that you're not gonna make a case because this is a huge, but I explicitly remember a Board of Finance member querying any notion of bonding for paving. Again, anyone in this town knows what a sizable chunk we're talking about there. But I would hope that notion doesn't end up being met with resistance, because this past comment is by someone who's still serving on there. So just I just raised that to you because that it precedes you.
I think I do that conversation at a budget hearing. So a road does not get the life expectancy because of the use of it that a parking lot does. So I know there was concern about doing a 20-year bond on a road that may have to be repaid in 15 years. Whereas a 20-year bond on a parking lot is a foreseeable thing. Because we
Okay. So you feel pretty safe about that, making that argument. Okay. And then the other question I'll look up myself. So thank you.
Mr. Krasnoff.
I just wanna comment on what Ms. Max Canelli just said. I think we do ourselves a disservice not to talk about state reimbursement, especially with the ECC piece. It's very clear in state legislature that having an ECC attached to an elementary school is one reimbursement versus having an ECC just standing alone somewhere else. So for us not to make that part of the discussion is us not doing our job. There is state legislature that says that point blank, you get a higher reimbursement that's part of an elementary school. So I just want to put that out there.
Have a follow-up to that? Victor describes and I don't know the answer to this, but I had also heard that the notion that something is designated as part of a campus, even if it is not physically attached, that there was a question about that being an option.
We're hearing this, but I've never heard such thing.
I would just interject that that you heard that. This topic has been discussed a lot in the working group and outside the working group. Mr. Popgeorge, I know, and Mr. Testani have communicated with members of our state delegation. I've been on some of those email chains, so I think that we are hoping to get as clear a picture as possible. I think that discussions that we will have over the next couple of weeks, reimbursement has a place in those discussions.
And if I can just finish, I want to be clear, it's only where there's any uncertainty. That's where I don't like it being part of the conversation. If it's a absolute, that's a different matter. So just, sorry if I didn't say that clearly.
No, and I think that that's fair, and I think that, you know, the working group and Mr. Testani and Mr. Popgeorge are doing their best due diligence to make sure that what we understand to be the case from the language in the legislation is actually what we expect. So that's, and we can have those discussions further. We can query the Spigal's consultants on that, because we did that today when that happens. So I think that, yeah, I think it will be, I understand where you're coming from. We don't wanna, you know, we don't wanna count money that's not already in our pockets, or we expect to be in our pockets.
Or that we can absolutely count on.
We can absolutely count on, and state law is fluid from time to time, but as things stand now, we're trying to plan based on what the language in the legislation is.
What we've discussed is what the lawmakers have passed hasn't caught up DAS yet. That's clear, because DAS is waiting, having internal, have the emails until they get all their things in ducks in a row, then they will post to their website.
Well, to that point, there are other districts lining up for this funding, assuming there's funding. So if we don't line up thinking we're gonna try to get the funding, maybe they will change, your point. So we need to get in line. That's why we're trying to speed up, or at least stay on time with the process.
Ms. Flynn, do you have your hand up?
Yes, just a quick follow-up on that. So currently in the waterfall that we're looking at, the reimbursement, does the Dwight number currently include a reimbursement for ECC, or is that flat? It's flat, okay. And then just for clarifying, I think it's important for the public, so right now, the current ECC number for that 1.5, that doesn't list any reimbursement. So currently a standalone ECC or early childhood space would not relegate us any reimbursement, correct? Sure.
That
Well,
number,
it's reflected on this number, that's all.
because that's a Mona Terrace number, and Mona Terrace is not eligible.
So currently a building that is not an elementary school, just a standalone preschool, would not be eligible for any kind of reimbursement, correct?
Unless we built one. We build a standalone ECC, one site, for example, it is.
But we can rely on that reimbursement, but not the other state legislature reimbursement?
That's what's already in.
I'm just really confused that we're gonna look at some reimbursement
No, no.
and not others.
So-
I'm getting a little confused.
Okay, so if you build a standalone under old legislation, you get a reimbursement. That's
So that's old legislation.
the bump up reimbursement for an ECC on an elementary school is new legislation.
Gotcha. So,
It's the
so
whole-
currently a standalone ECC does not get any reimbursement, correct?
It does.
You get your
Does.
standard.
Standard,
Standard,
no bump.
not
No bump, right.
no bump.
Trying to focus the conversation, please.
That's all I'm literally just trying to go through the numbers that are before us.
Mr. Lee.
I just wanna reiterate, right? We all want something, we all want some kind of reimbursement, but since I've been doing this kind of stuff, this Board of Education never not once said we're not gonna do a project because of the reimbursement. We're doing the project because we need the new building, right? We need it for the kids and that's what it's about. Great, we get reimbursement. My experience is we never got more than X, even though it's been said this, right? So before we even go down that track, let's focus on why we want this building and what the need is for. And then you worry about the reimbursement later, because what happens today, the minute you put something in the ground, you're not, we as a board, anyone else isn't gonna see that reimbursement right away, right? It goes on through time and it goes on how you file it. So let's just be cautious that we're looking at something, not because we're getting reimbursed on, it, but what the reason we need it for. I think we move forward with that one.
But to that point, if one project shouldn't be picked over another project, assuming just because there's no reimbursement, there is a reimbursement.
You shouldn't assume there's
Like
any.
a standalone project, just to pick that project.
These last three buildings you've done in this town, this board has not once said, oh, we're gonna do a Mill Hill and we get, because we're getting a 30% reimbursement.
Lee, while I understand where you're going with this, the projects that we will be considering are gonna be different than projects that we've considered in the past. And have more moving parts as regards to reimbursement. I totally get what you're saying. I'm very sympathetic to that. I think that reimbursement will be a factor in the discussions we'll have for the next couple of weeks. I agree that I don't wanna build something just for the sake of getting the shiny prize of reimbursement. I don't think anyone at this table wants to do that. I think everyone's gonna be focused on what our educational need is. But in the end, and I think other town bodies may look at this as well. I mean, there may be cases where something, some formula tips the scale. But we'll have those discussions in the weeks ahead. I don't wanna say that we're gonna not do it or only rely on it. I think it's gonna be a factor.
Are you saying that because of the information that you've received in these meetings? Is that why you're saying it?
I just, in my experience with what we've been talking about in the working group, I think this going to be.
It's not based on real numbers that you had access to in the meetings? I'm just trying to, that's a statement that.
I have seen as recently as a couple of hours ago, draft numbers in the draft report. So I have a sense of where these numbers are. It's not my report to release. I've been trying to respect the Board of Selectmen's role in this process, but I've also been trying to say, we need these numbers as soon as we can. So that's why.
You could see how it's difficult to have this discussion when some board members have this information and others don't.
That's why he's saying we're gonna have it in the future.
I hope that next time we meet, we will all have these numbers. Start a conversation on that basis. And if there are no more questions or comments, this is gonna be our September, people. So just so everyone's prepared. I'll try to send out a memo with all of the meeting dates that we may need and hopefully we can arrange it all.
Mr. Peterson, sorry. So just to confirm right now, it's September 3rd at 7 p.m. is technically supposed to be confirmed or confirmed.
I put it in kind of bold pencil, but not yet in pen. It's the best I can do.
That's fine. It's already into the calendar.
All right, item 8, superintendent's report. We can start with opening day. How'd it go?
Opening day went really well. As I mentioned earlier, we do have some glitches that we're working out in the rollout of the new visitor system, so just ask some folks to bear with us. I even was working as I was leaving Ward High School this morning, helping a parent try to get scanned in. She was really patient. I thanked her for that because I was losing patience myself, but I do think, and I'm gonna talk a little bit more with Marco about this, that it could be proximity to access points, since it is all wireless, that could have an effect on its ability to communicate that's the case, we'll make some upgrades, add access points. I also think we have to talk a little bit about, and Angeles and I will talk more about the location of those iPads. Right now, they're on the outside of the building. There's some concern about weather. They're iPads, so what I'd like to see is how we can adjust to have those with the schools as we get all vestibules done. We can have those in the vestibule, so someone would enter in through the first doors. They wouldn't be able to enter the second doors until
How it works now.
it would make more sense. But this will make a lot more sense as when it's completely rolled out and people are familiar with the process. So please bear with us. Had a great convocation. I thought feedback was great. Everyone who was able to make it, thank you for attending. Working on booking next year's convocation speaker. I don't know if you're available. Thank you for bringing some humor as well to this year's convocation. I thought it was worked out really nicely. I think people appreciated it. Just as we start the school year to keep it fun. It was mentioned earlier by Mr. Krasnoff and Mrs. Jacobson, but I want to thank Angeles and all the custodians and maintenance teams across the entire district because it is a huge lift to try to get buildings opened. A lot of work gets done, as Mrs. Jacobson mentioned, in a short window. Unlike the town, it's been something I've preached for many, many years now. We don't have the luxury of fixing a sidewalk in the middle of April or do a project. We have really a short window of time when kids aren't in the building. Many of our buildings are occupied during the summer as well with Parks and Rec and ESY and high schools, credit recovery. So manipulating these things when buildings are offline are really difficult. So thank you for that. We are almost completely to start the first day fully staffed. We did have a vacancy that we're trying to fill in special education. It's not a major vacancy that we should have done by the end of this week, if not next week. And we had a late resignation, teacher still with us until they can move on. But other than that, we have fully staffed, which is pretty impressive when I talk to others in the region who are struggling to find people. There are some districts with significant vacancies as they start the school year. So we did a great job in getting those openings and vacancies posted early, interviewing, getting through the process. You all received the enrollment. We're keeping an eye on 2 of our schools and grade levels, Burke Kindergarten and Riverfield Second Grade. Those aren't typically areas of concern or schools of concern, but I'm a little concerned and keeping a close eye if there's any late kindergarten registration up in the Burke area. But other than that, from the projection till now, we have less sections, so that's a good thing. But keep an eye, and we have a week and a half left, and we did have some people call regarding, closing of houses, possible leases and things like that. I didn't ask where, but those could be affected. Stay tuned for that. And, the talk of the town for the last 3 weeks has been the Fairfield National Boys. I think tonight, we'll just congratulate them for one last time. It's time for them to get back to normal. They did return back to school today. Last night, I think it was a great evening for not just them, but the entire Fairfield community to come together. That was a pretty impressive display of appreciation just for the ride they took everybody on. But it's amazing how it just brought some light to what, otherwise has been a great summer. But I think there's a lot of different things that are going on across the world. And I think that just took everyone's mind off of things for a couple of weeks. And just, it's a kid's game, right? Maybe we should just take things a little bit more lightly and have a little fun.
I don't know, they fought that team.
Well,
They were playing at a pretty high level, so.
a couple of those boys have some intensity and great job by them. So congratulations. And if anybody has any questions about the first day, hopefully everyone's kids had a good experience. lot of traffic on the roads this morning. Even as late as, late morning trying to get around town. I think that's gonna work itself out as bus drivers, they were a little unsure of themselves as well. A lot of parents on the road. A lot of parents at drop off this morning at our elementary schools. It was nice to see on the first day, seeing both mom and dad dropping off, which was
Just one quick question, maybe, and I don't know the appropriate route to do that, not that any of the 9 of us couldn't do this, but just through the chair to Mr. Testani, a request maybe to ask the first selectman's office if in the next update, there could be something specific about buses. I don't wanna get the town involved in the e-bikes, but that idea that there is a statute regarding stopping for buses. And I think that's it. Unfortunately, I think an annual reminder is always a good idea.
I know the police department's been put out a lot of messages on their social media pages as well.
I thought about safety. I didn't see it on stop.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll have this discussion at some point. A lot of municipalities, a lot of towns, now that Connecticut passed some law, I believe it was last year, New York's had it on the books for a while. A lot of them are putting cameras on the outside of the buses. And it's shouldn't be the main purpose, but it is I guess, the gravy on top. It is a revenue generator for a town, but it also does stop. There is an enormous number of people that drive by. You will not believe how many until you do gather some data and then they play it back for you. It's scary how many people do not respect the stop sign out.
Right.
That's something that I was going to do a little bit deeper of a dive. There is some companies that do a really good job with that, and it does have a positive impact overall in the community. It's out that you get that hefty $450 fine that you pass through the stop sign.
Is there not legislation that way with that or?
No, so the legislation
There's
that
some
actually.
confusion on.
So the legislation that needed to pass and finally did pass in Connecticut was that they can receive the ticket from a third party.
Already.
Prior to that, it had to be issued by a police officer.
Okay.
So that made it difficult for police departments to be able to have the manpower to be able to go out and do this. Now it can be directly sent, kind of like an easy pass. If you blow through, you'll get a ticket. And if you don't pay it, now they have the ability to do that. So what happens is then they take a portion of, because it's their work, and then they give a portion to the town or the city for the infractions they collect. And they do all of that. Something that we may want to have a conversation with the first selectman's office to see if we want to do some sort of collaboration with them.
And hopefully what we could do is prevent it in the first place, but that's where, if it could be in the update, I just think it can't hurt.
Sure, and the e-bikes, as you mentioned, have sent out a couple of notifications that keep doing that. It is a huge problem. I'm really concerned that it's gonna be sooner than later that we have a tragedy in this town, and we don't need to, if people just listen to what I'm saying. It's bad, it's really bad. And, the other day, there was a young man driving down the road, and he's on his phone trying to text and on.
Probably no helmet.
Definitely no helmet. And the helmet's not gonna save him. Because they're not traveling, at 5 miles an hour, 6 miles an hour. They're traveling upwards of 30 to 40 miles an hour.
I just have a question about the visitor system, and it was mentioned earlier that there was an app component to it.
Yes.
Do you think that that app would help with the expediency and accessing the school or to smooth out that process? Could a special communication go out? I read the communication, but I actually maybe I didn't understand it well enough to know.
The first thing I did was do the app from that, yeah.
So, because I read it, I was like, oh, there are all these steps when I arrive, so if that's something people can do ahead of time.
I could ask Rachel
it's
to
understood that.
doctor it a little bit to just condense it for people that may be having some for who, especially people who frequent buildings often,
Right.
app will just save you a lot of time.
And I actually, just to be honest, I did not understand that was, I thought it was like what, cause it listed all the steps, right? So I just thought that was like to do.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, it is really great. Thanks.
Any other questions, comments?
I'm happy to, that's fine.
I did have a bullet on here for update about town working group. I think I've said pretty much everything that I would have said anyway. If there are any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. But again, look for that report Friday. I don't know when on Friday. This Friday is what I've been told. Moving on to the liaison reports. Ms. McNamara.
Just very briefly, I am again, optimism here, but I believe we will be done with everything in the policy audit this month of September.
Oh.
That's my goal. For all of you who are keeping track.
I don't have a report, but I have a question for you. You didn't touch, I don't know if this is allowed. I have a Parks and Rec question.
Go ahead.
Do you know anything about when the lights are gonna come online for the new RLMS field?
No, but
Or
happy
when
to
the
ask.
netting is gonna go up?
Lights and netting. I shall report back.
I haven't seen the.
There was somebody down there last week trying to turn the lights on and it wasn't working. My son happens to play football and they're practicing there at night, so it's starting to get dark earlier. And was just curious if those lights are even live yet.
Okay, thank you.
Get a one on his helmet.
Helmet light, I was just gonna say that. Helmet light.
Other committee and liaison reports?
A minor.
The finance committee is gonna be the next Wednesday. Thing we'll be looking forward to is our Q1 review, financial review. We'll be giving that up for the fiscal Q1. Starting July 1. We'll be reporting to the Board of Finance on the 16th of September. The report before that.
We didn't get Q4.
We'll also get that.
Oh,
Anything else? Otherwise, open board comment? Seeing none, public comment? You came. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Lee, second by Mrs. Jacobson, all in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much.
Any luck with